up? Good morning. I'm Marina. This is Scott. We're the coffee experts here at Beanbox, and this is the morning show by Beanbox.
Before we even start to talk about the differences in coffee, you need to start with fresh coffee. This means anywhere from a few days off roast up to a few weeks. After that, you can dive into the different roast profiles.
Another aspect that you can start to pay attention to with specialty coffee is, first of all, whether it's a blend or a single origin and what that origin is. Single origin coffees will have the name of the origin right there in front of you and then expand upon it for either sub-region, farm, varietal, etc. Anything that comes after the name of that country is going to be a little more expert level. You don't have to start paying attention to that just yet. But even noticing which country's coffee you're drinking, you're going to start to put those flavor profiles in different categories. And you're going to notice that a Kenyan coffee, for example, tastes a lot different than an Ethiopian coffee, even though they're both African coffees. And it can be as dramatic as recognizing that you're drinking a red wine versus a white wine versus a rosé.
Brew method will also make a big difference. What I like to do is pair a coffee with the brew method that's going to bring out the most in it. For example, with my lighter roasted single origin coffees, I'll choose a more delicate method like a pour over or AeroPress. And with my darker, deeper roasted coffee where I want to taste some more of the body, I'll use a method like a French press or auto brewer.
That said, if you have fresh coffee that tastes great, you're going to notice those differences no matter how you're brewing it. You don't even have to start tasting the coffee to start tasting the coffee. There's going to be a texture to how the coffee feels in your mouth before you even recognize any difference in flavor. Some coffees are really thick, rich, and creamy. Some are very light and crisp. Sometimes the flavor is very concentrated. Sometimes the flavor is very nuanced and complex, and you have to let that taste sit in your mouth a little bit before you can figure out what's going on with it. There's some technical coffee parlance around these types of characteristics in a cup. Body generally refers to how thick is that coffee, and then that ties into something called mouthfeel.
Mouthfeel.
Which is just fun to say. How's the mouth feel? But we say it all the time. We say this coffee has a really great mouthfeel. This coffee doesn't have a very good mouthfeel. Right. And that can encompass whether the coffee feels sticky in your mouth, whether it leaves an aftertaste that can be pleasant or unpleasant, whether you're like...
Sometimes it's a really light, slick, tea-light coffee. And I think the next thing that goes into is the immediate reaction in your mouth after tasting a coffee. We broadly categorize this as acidity. If you drink a cup of coffee or if you even take a bite of a fruit, the way that you salivate and how it feels in your mouth is an expression of acidity.
Acidity in flavor has nothing to do with the pH in a coffee. Acidity, coffee that has a lot of acidic flavors to it is not necessarily going to be chemically more acidic than a darker roast or a roast that tastes a little flatter. I think that's a common misconception around coffee. That said, there are coffees grown in areas that are lower acid.
And typically when a roaster roasts their coffee a bit darker, they can tame out some of those acids.
In general, acidity and flavor will come across in comparison to fruit. And when we're comparing coffee that has more acidic flavor profile to it, we'll think, what fruit is this reminding me of? Is this like an apple's acidity, which is very different than a lemon's acidity, which is very different than a berry acidity. So reading a description of a coffee that describes it with a berry-like acidity or a lemon-like acidity is just referring to that sharpness and the way you're going to feel it in the sides of your mouth, as opposed to, I'm going to have some Tums after drinking this coffee because this is going to hit me hard. Paying attention to your coffee can be a real moment of zen in your morning. It's definitely a moment of zen in my morning where the rest of the world goes away for a length of time and I can pay attention to my experience with that coffee. I think that it can bring a really nice calming, it can be a nice calming part of your day.
So after you brew the coffee, you're gonna want it to cool down and not burn your tongue. This is a really good opportunity to get close to your coffee and really try to breathe in deeply. So much of the coffee right after it's brewed is going to give off a lot of aromatics that are going to inform exactly what you're going to taste later. I like to give it a good swirl in my mug and really get close in there. When you're smelling ground coffee, you're picking up the fragrance, and when you're smelling coffee that had water just poured over it, you're taking in the aroma. And that's just how we call it when we're assessing coffee.
Oh, that is a fun fact.
Yeah.
Fun fragrance
Fun
fact.
fragrance fact. Thanks for watching the morning show. Let's brew this.
Let's brew it.